Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Gentile. For the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him. Zola Levit presents Considering the Times and Seasons of Our World Today. Here's Zola Levit.
Shalom, hello again. We're back with Joan Peters this week. We had quite a lengthy interview with her, and I sure enjoyed it. She's the author of From Time Immemorial, a textbook in use in the United States and Israel, and it should be read by everybody in the world as far as I'm concerned. The origins of the Arab-Jewish conflict over Palestine. Ms. Peters served as White House advisor on American foreign policy in the Middle East during the Carter administration. She's lectured to the U.S. State Department. Apparently hadn't said enough. She's appeared on 200 radio and television programs. I could go on and on. Written in Harper's Commentary, The New Republic, The New Leader, other periodicals. She was kind enough to be our guest. You know, we're living in a time of such conflict. The scripture alludes to it. Psalm 83 says, with one mind they plot together. They form an alliance against you, the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, of Moab and the Hagrites. And it lists a bunch of basically Arab tribes plotting against Israel. And it says in verse 12, they have claimed, let us take possession of the pasture lands of God. That's exactly what seems to be going on in today's world. And Joan Peters is the expert who can comment on it. She's gone over there, she's talked to them, she's researched this subject thoroughly. We opened our discussion with her talking about our dangerous dependence on Arab oil.
We must find a way to become totally independent of the Arab Muslim states which are holding us at bay with blackmail. We don't need their oil. We can find oil many other places. We don't need the Arab oil at all. We can do totally without it. And that's blasphemous by itself, but it's a fact. They have been preventing the world from moving on, and they've been preventing their own brothers from becoming progressive in their own countries. There are a lot of people in those countries who would like to be much more democratic, who would like to live a different kind of life, but don't dare even mutter a word about it. Because as one of the television directors in Cairo told me, the news is a pyramid and it all starts at the top.
You know, I often think when you travel in the Middle East, you realize that CNN is broadcasting that Arabs are seeing women empowered like yourself, attractive, not covered with sleeping bags or silly robes or whatever, and that must get under their skin. They see our movies, they see that we have nice things. I mean, this is normal human life. They must want what we have. They surely don't want to turn us into them. I mean, do they want to create a world where 50% of the population is enslaved and covered up like women, and everybody is living a medieval, feudal lifestyle? Is that what they want?
I think it's not even coherent. What they want is visceral, and what they want is to be the powerful, and they want everything to be beneath them. The Quran does say that no one shall be equal to, but must be beneath the Muslims, and that all infidels must be subject to the whim of the Muslims. And that is the way we must accept the Muslim world. We must understand that there are people within that community. You know, I was doing this book for 10 years, and I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. There were people who helped me. I never could have done it without Arab help. Mm-hmm. But as it turned out, most of the Arab help I had was Christian. There were very few within the Muslim community who had any interest in helping.
No, right.
They were brought up on the textbooks I quote in my book. You know, the book is filled with nothing but all the materials the Arabs have grown up with and the reasons that they are the way they are. And unless we understand where they're coming from, we can't correct anything. The Arabs have victims now. There is a people who grew up recently who think of themselves as Palestinians because they have been created as the human bomb. It behooves our country, it behooves our State Department, it behooves our academics not to kowtow, to accommodate, to become obsequious to the Arabs who want us to lie, but to tell the truth. And then from the point of knowing, we can begin a bargaining position. But we have to know, and they have to know that we know, that we're coming to this position from strength and not from weakness. That's what we're not doing right.
Well, we have a war on terrorism, we say.
But how can you call it a war on terrorism when it's Muslim terrorists? These are Islamic terrorists. Most of them were Saudis. They have been fed, clothed, and spiritually provided for by the Saudi Arabians and by Iraq in some cases. But the Arab billions have provided all the hatred against us. How is it that we can't accept that?
And why don't we reflect that the billions were ours originally? We've given the money to them for oil that, like you say, we don't even really need to buy.
That's really true.
I mean, we get the money up, we print it, we give it to them, they use it to buy weapons, they fly planes into the World Trade Center. Now we have a war not on Muslims or Islam itself, but on terrorism. Do we have a war on terrorism was going to be one of my questions for you.
Well, I think the problem is that we have a war on terrorism in name. We've been bombing weddings in Afghanistan. I don't know if that's a fair answer for me to give you. I'm sure that was a mistake that anybody could have made
like the
under our
Israelis
situation.
Well, I wonder why now there's not a commission to see if we did a massacre.
No, but they did. They did do it. They couldn't find any. There was no massacre.
No, of
it was
course.
totally made out of whole cloth. It was
Naturally.
completely a lie.
In Jenin, it didn't happen, but in Afghanistan,
And
we've done the same thing. We've had some civilian casualties as part of our battle.
Well, that wasn't the same as Jenin. Jenin was a made-up massacre. It never happened.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
We didn't mean to massacre these people.
Well, that's totally
but
different.
you can accuse the Israelis of this reasonably in the UN. No one would dare accuse the Americans of this.
Oh, they will.
You think they will?
Oh, yes. I think eventually they will. Yes.
There were about the same number of casualties. It struck me that the only difference of those two encounters really was the Israelis were willing to go house to house and take casualties on their own, and our guys were flying 15,000 feet in the air, throwing bombs down, and one of them got out of line.
Well,
We
in
didn't even
the
take a
case of the
chance.
Israelis, nobody in their right minds would have let that land remain in the hands of Arabs after what they did so far. They would have gone in and taken the land back. They would never have let the Arabs keep it. The fact that they are going house to house and going into those human bomb sites, the camps, which the Arabs have purposely kept as twisted and horrible rat's nests, they're not bad, by the way, physically to live in. They're towns, but they have the most unimportant things are the physical qualities. What they don't have is identity.
Yes.
They've been prevented from having from anything but one identity. The only identity they've been allowed to have is the terrorist identity. And I know that if they were offered the kind of freedom, the kind of industry, the kind of health benefits that the people of Israel have on the east bank of the Jordan River in Jordan, which is a Palestinian state where 80% of the people are Palestinian. Did you know that?
I didn't know it was 80%.
Yes, the parliament, 80% of them. And if you sell land to a Jew in Jordan, it's punishable by death.
By death.
By death.
I didn't understand that either.
That was our friendly country.
That's right. They're considered
But
the...
in their law books and on their laws still exists that if it's a statute that's very clear that to sell land to a Jew is prohibited and punishable by death.
Are there any lands anywhere where Jews are not permitted to live except Arab lands?
Well, I don't know that they're not permitted to live in Arab lands. There are some Jews living in poverty and
Well, let's
misery.
say buy property.
They're not permitted. Equality.
No, if you wanted to buy property, let's say a Jew could buy property in China, in
I don't
Russia,
know.
in Europe, in America, but I don't think a Jew could buy property in any Arab land.
I really don't know. I know that they don't have any, that the Jews have fled.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was either that after the 1948 war, or they would have been slaughtered. Some of them were, or hanged as Zionist spies.
Let me say this. We don't have many journalists, authors, etc. on our program simply because they don't know this subject very well. What makes you so different from your peers? I mean, we have talked with Cal Thomas, Joseph Ferris, some bright
Joseph
people.
Farah, yes.
And I'm not picking them for their point of view, but I'm picking them for knowledge. But you are certainly a peer, and more so. You've written this splendid book. It's one of the scariest books I ever read, by the way.
Scary?
I fear for the whole future of this world after I read this book.
Do you? No, please don't, because the book should make you feel better. It means that the facts are in line with what the Bible promised, and they're also in line with what the Jews have been saying. The Jews deserve redemption. They have been subjected to the world's most infamous, most horrific crimes,
Yes,
and now they've finally got their country. Too late for to prevent the Holocaust, but you know they should have had their country. It was given to them in 1920.
Yeah.
And if they had been allowed to keep that land in the 20s and 30s, instead of the British government operating its mandate of Palestine in the breach and preventing Jews from coming in and letting Arabs come in, these Arabs from time immemorial were given false papers, and the British government honored them as natives and then said the land was too full to take Jews. So there was no Jewish national home, even though the International League of Nations had mandated that home.
This is what I mean by scary. I mean, I'm reading about one of the modern nations, one of our closest allies, Britain, and I read what she said, and it's unquestionably documented here.
Oh, many Britons have also written it. I have some sources who are British. And you know, the British love to hate themselves. When my book came out in England, it was a different copy. It was in English instead of American.
In British, huh?
And it was so popular, it was in Herod's window. It was one of the two spring picks.
In
and
Harrods,
it was
it's an Arab store.
the big, no, Herod's, yes, that's right.
When you think about it.
It's an Arab store. Good Lord.
I've been in Harrods, and
Good
the
Lord.
Arabs are comfortable
Your
there.
humor is staggering.
Look, the book it shines a light in the basement, but unfortunately that light shows me all kind of monsters. That's what I mean.
Well, I'm planning to go. I'm trying to get an invitation now to testify before Congress and hopefully the Senate as well. I hope it will be in the near future. Well, when they come back into
Godspeed, yes.
Into session, I think in the fall I will be. It's very important for them. Well, there are people who are already saying it. You know, the good news is that the Israelis have General Sharon now as their prime minister. He's a very good man. He is a very fair man. And I only hope he lives and remains healthy, because his strength is the most important thing Israel has going for it right now. There is not a lot of strength there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I interviewed him and visited him at his ranch, and in his home environment, you wouldn't know him from any other rancher raising lambs. He stepped out of a shot with a TV camera running to pick up a baby lamb that was crying. This is not what's described in the press at all.
No, well, the press has gotten a fix on this Jewish state as though we were the ones who did the lynching and slavery in the South.
Oh, yes.
They have sort of put us together with all the racists. The Americans are racists, and therefore, if the Americans are racists, then so are the Israelis, because the Israelis are a democracy. And if ever anything was further from the truth, I don't know what it is.
And how do you say it's a racial problem? Anyway, I've heard this for years and years, but you can't tell an Arab from a Jew walking down the street. They are of the same race as far as race goes. It's not like Caucasian people and African American people. They're different, but the Arabs and the Jews are practically the same. They're cousins. It's not a
really.
racial situation. I mean, they're different in what they think
but
of.
Their mindset and their hearts are totally. The Arabs are overwhelmed by death. That is their main objective. The death of the country of Israel, and further, the death of the great Satan.
Oh, yeah.
And the Israelis are overwhelmingly occupied with peace at any cost, which may cost them the Jewish state if someone doesn't help them.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Ask for our free monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter, and our catalog with videos, books, and music. Our correspondence course, the Institute of Jewish Christian Studies, includes reading packets, teaching cassettes, and mail-in tests. Did you know that Zola takes tours to Israel, Greece, and the Holy Land Experience theme park in Orlando, Florida? Please contact us for more information.
Israel, the way we see it on the tour, is the way you see it there in our TV spots. It's peaceful. It's pleasant to travel. We've taken, 75 consecutive tours for 30 years with no cancellation. What the media claims is like a highlight film. Israel is not all that exciting. Our next tour is in October. Join us, will you? You'll love that place, believe me. Take a look at it before you go for a 1,000-year tour. We went on with Joan Peters. I understand you're making a film.
I actually was not going to make a film. Very actively was not going to. I had been approached by BBC a number of years ago, and I was flattered. Yeah. I succumbed to flattery and allowed them to talk me into doing a documentary on my book. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, my first husband, who is now of memory, was a brilliant lawyer, and he insisted I keep every right known to man and woman in order to prevent BBC from infringing or conversely distorting everything in my book. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, they came up with a script that did exactly that, that turned everything on its head, which the British, of course, BBC is known for. And of course, I pulled back the rights, and they couldn't argue with it. They tried to sue me, and I was not able to be sued. There was no way that they could make me give my book to anyone if it was being distorted.
Sure.
So when this man, a year and a half ago, came to me and was pleading for the rights to do a film called The Myth, he said that it had affected him so deeply, he had never had any interest in the Middle East before, and that his wife's family had been born in Iraq. And one of his wife's relatives, I believe, was hanged in a square in Baghdad because he was accused of being a Zionist spy. Of course, he wasn't. He was a factory owner, and they wanted his money. Mm-hmm. And so they simply did what they many times do. They accused what is a crime, being a Zionist spy. This man got to me after about the 6th try and sent me his films. He has done a number of prize-winning films on many important, serious problems of our day, from drugs to problem children to politics, but never has he entered the world of the Middle East. And I thought his films were so good that I called him and said, "You have my permission, and I'm sending a letter signing it telling you that you can go about getting funding for it with my blessings. And of course, keeping control, because I'll still wait until I see the final product.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I believe that it's in the making right now.
That will be very interesting. I look forward to seeing it.
Well, it's not just interesting. For me, it's a clone. You know, I am only one person.
Yeah.
And it's very amazing for me, who was in the middle of another book, and having this from time immemorial was eking out a maybe 5,000 a year sales in the paperback, the newest edition. And all of a sudden, when Oslo fell apart, and people began to see what was really happening, my book took off. It's been a second coming, and I haven't been able to get to places I want to get to, and I realize now that students, non-Muslim students in universities, are being intimidated by the Muslim propagandists,
Oh, they sure are.
both physically and emotionally,
Yes.
to prevent them from even asking what Zionism is,
Yes.
what Israel is, what is the Jewish liberation movement. They don't teach such things in the universities. And what's more, I was invited to speak at departments I spoke at when the book first came out. I was invited back to speak at some of those departments recently, Department of Political History, Political Science, Middle East History, all kinds of different journalism classes. I was told that it would not be safe if I went to Berkeley or if I went to Columbia University. They said that there was no way they could guarantee my security. I went to Texas.
Goodness.
I won't tell you where in Texas. I won't tell you the name of the university, but I ended up not going there because of security. I ended up speaking in a church. And I had 1,000 people, and they were fabulous.
Well, I'll tell you what, you have 1 million people listening now who are kindred spirits, and I hope you get a lot of invitations. As a matter of fact, if the people would like to hear you speak, they can write to us, and we will keep you informed. And I think you should be heard. I think you have done a magnificent work. And
I want to be heard, but I want to be heard by the schools. I want the school children who are growing up before they get their biases to know what the facts are, so that they have a straight back when they ask a question like, why is Israel being maligned by the Arab Muslim world, without being afraid for their lives or their very grades in school, because the professors also have fallen into line with the Muslim propaganda.
all right, we'll go for it. Thank you very much. It's been a learning experience. People, I think, would say, well, Zola Levit knows all about this subject.
I'm sure you do.
Not now I do, from leading from time immemorial, which people can get it.
Well, From Time Immemorial now has another book that has the same title. Apparently titles are not copyrightable.
Titles are not copyrightable.
I didn't know that.
No, they're liable to make a movie with Tom Cruise from time immemorial.
Well, they might make it, but they made a book that was about something else, and I think it was done as a deterrent. So if anybody asks for it on worldnetdaily.com or on Amazon or wherever, they have to say it's From Time Immemorial, the origins of the Arab-Jewish conflict over Palestine.
Or by Joan Peters.
Or by Joan Peters, or all three.
Yes, okay. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
One of the most discouraging government documents in the world is the Palestinian National Charter. I mean, it's discouraging because 30 of its 33 paragraphs demonstrate an animosity toward another nation, Israel. There is no country that makes its, I mean, we have a Declaration of Independence, and it makes veiled reference to Britain. Our Constitution is about our laws. It doesn't refer to any other country, but this is almost entirely in reference to the neighboring country. And Joan had printed the whole Palestinian National Charter in her book. By the way, you can get this from time immemorial in any bookstore. You don't have to write to us. Just go in any place. It's for sale, believe me. Among the points brought out in the charter, one, armed struggle is the only way to liberate Palestine. Of course, that assumes there was something called Palestine to liberate. The establishment of the State of Israel was entirely illegal. You know, the UN approved of this. Russia voted for it. The United States voted for it. The Balfour Declaration is deemed null and void. This was a British pronouncement of 1917 that said that the Jews could reestablish a homeland in their native Israel. Claims of historical and religious ties of Jews to the land are incompatible with the facts of history. That's just balderdash, and there's archaeology galore and history to prove it. Zionism is racism and fanatic in its nature, aggressive, expansionist, and colonial in its aims, fascist in its methods. It's just almost cursing. And, you know, when you look at the facts, Zionism is the only government system that isn't racist. Israel's the only country that takes even black Africans as first-class citizens, not servants, and takes people from every nation in the world. Name me another nation that does that. Well, we do by accident because our borders are so porous anybody can walk in, but Israel does not discriminate among people. Any nation, it's fine. And they are the last people in the world to be called racist. Rather, it's the Arabs of Saudi Arabia and so on that cannot tolerate even visitors making a prayer in their own religion and so on. Psalm 83 goes on, you know, it's beautiful and so relevant. O God, do not keep silent, be not quiet, O God, be not still, see how your enemies are astir. Come, they say, let us destroy them as a nation, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. Well, I have this to say about that. Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Our offer this week: Is fanatic Islam a global threat? A compelling study of Islam, offering proof that this is the major force of destabilization in the world today. This book cuts through the media's rhetoric to the hard, cold facts confronting all of us. Is fanatic Islam a global threat? A must-read for $15. Each month, our free Levitt letter brings you updates on recent events, in-depth articles, Hebrew lessons, and special offers. Also ask about the Levitt Letter Extra. This cutting-edge, rush-printed newsletter is mailed first class or emailed immediately after any important event. The Levitt Letter Extra is the perfect supplement to Zola's free newsletter, The Levitt Letter. Please call 1-800-WONDERS. That's 1-800-966-3377. Or write to Zola, Box 12268, Dallas, Texas 75225. When you're on the internet, visit Zola's website, www.levitt.com. Zola Levit Presents depends on tax-deductible donations from viewers like you.